October 17th, 2021. A night of history. The first schedule expansion since 1978 pits the Steelers against the Seahawks. A matchup forever etched in silver.
You are here for history tonight. In the 102-year history of the National Football League, there has never been more than 2 members of any team enshrined in the same year. Tonight, you have 5 Pittsburgh Steelers that are being enshrined.
Achievements of that magnitude are inspiring to the players that follow, and they relish the chance to build their own legacies on the Sunday night stage.
That's the way to work. Come on. He's hit that sack. The Steelers win the football game. Let's go. Come get it. You know what it is.
This one is in the history books.
Here we go.
Welcome to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.
Hi everybody, welcome to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. I'm Missi Matthews, joined by Bob Pompeani. It is the bye week, so we're giving Coach some time off this week. But as we sit here after 6 games, the overtime thriller against the Seahawks, the Steelers were able to stack some wins heading into this bye, Bob.
That's the most important thing, Missy. They had gone 1-3. Situation was urgent in a sense because they had lost 2 home games. They go to Green Bay, they lose that game. But they had to win at home, and they did. They had to get to 3-3, mission accomplished.
All right, let's talk about the offense first. You know, getting off to a fast start, 14 points in the first half. You go into halftime, you think, okay, but then things started to sputter.
Yeah, the second quarter was a good quarter. The first quarter, you know, the Steelers had gone back-to-back games, first drive touchdowns, which was encouraging to see since it was, 13 games in a row without one. This game went back to that. But in the second quarter, again, running the ball with Najee Harris opened up some pass lanes, and Ben Roethlisberger put the ball where he had to. And Najee Harris, boy, he's going to be a big part of everything moving forward.
I thought in terms of the offensive line, maybe not duplicating what they were able to do against the Denver Broncos. But as you said, Najee warmed up in the second half, but they kept Ben clean.
Yeah.
I still think penalties are something, those mental mistakes that need to be cleaned up for everybody. And, I think not having Juju Smith-Schuster the first game maybe took a little bit for people to get used to, but I thought the tight ends really stepped up.
Yeah, specifically Pat Freiermuth, and you see an increased role for him, which is very important over the middle. Again, I would like to see more personally stuff over the middle because I think the edge play becomes more prolific if there's a presence in the middle. Not unlike having a run game needing to set up play action down the field. So these are all things that continue to evolve, but they're 3-3 and they got a very big game coming up after the bye week, that's for sure.
All right, well, before we talk about that game, it was a roller coaster at Heinz Field on Sunday Night Football. Here's the sights and sounds of the Steelers ending against the Seahawks.
Hey, I like that whole drive you had right there. You was going for the balls. Keep going. There's so much more game. We got to finish this game. Finish this game.
Seattle wins the toss. They want the football. Oh, this is a big series coming up here now. You've got to have your juice, got to have your mojo. He gets the call. He's bear hugged for a loss. Back by Cameron Hayward. Big rush. He's sacked. Back inside the 45. Big play by the big man, T.J. Watt. What did I say, Billy? Big-time players come through in the big plays. T.J. Watt coming through with the sacration.
As the night grew longer, the Steelers dug deeper and came up with one last game-changing play.
Play action fake. Smith wants to throw it. And he's going to run it. And the ball came out. The Steelers pick it up. And that is Devin Bush running around with a football. T.J. Watt stripped the ball away from quarterback Geno Smith. T.J. Watt is huge. This is what Defensive Player of the Year, what they do. You talk about special. In the big moments, they don't blink. They're not unfamiliar with the pressure. They're not unfamiliar with not coming through. They are big in big moments. This will be a 37-yarder from dead straight away. Snap is down. Kick by Boz. On its way. Kick is good. And this game is over. Well, it wasn't the Mona Lisa, but it certainly is their second win in a row, and they head to the bye at 3-3. You couldn't write the end up any better for a guy that you think could well be the Defensive Player of the Year because he delivered big time for his Pittsburgh Steelers.
The best defensive player in the world. Let's go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, thrilling end. TJ Watt coming up big. And, you know, when you're interviewed by the national broadcast afterwards, you had a pretty good game.
Specifically, tremendous overtime. I mean, we have never seen that before in the history of the league, you know, since they start counting sacks. 2 sacks, a forced fumble, all in overtime. And you wonder why the money is there for him. He's a big money player, and they needed it. But the good thing about this defense, I think, Missy, is the fact there are other guys starting to feel their way around. Alex Highsmith back from an injury. I thought he played very well, and he's going to give them a presence on the other side. And I also think that a guy like Troy Norwood, who was like, or Trey, he was all over the place, making plays, specifically on third down plays. You don't see that from a 7th-round pick coming in and immediately making an impact, but I thought he did.
Yeah, and for Trey Norwood being a rookie, you know, in training camp, he was kind of learning some different positions, and then finally they, I think, found where he's comfortable at. And, you know, I talked to Devin Bush after the game, and he said he is a young guy, but he's a fast learner, and he is a major part of that defense. So hopefully that progression continues in the second half.
They're going to need that. I think this team will go as far as that defense will take it, too. You got to just, on offense, stay away from making the mistakes. This sounds simple. Tomlin talks about it all the time. But on defense, take the ball away. They haven't made that many. This game was a good indication that maybe there's more of that to come.
Yeah, and you know, Cam Hayward, I think we talk about him every week, but it is fair what he is able to do. No Tyson Alualu, no Stephon Tuitt, and Cam is just a force. He is also a game wrecker. You know, that's what he called TJ Watt, but the same could be said for Cam. Without
a lot of help on there, and all due respect to everyone who's left on that defensive line, but he's the anchor of it. Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast said he's a Hall of Famer, and I think his career is trending in that direction. If you look at, especially after the age of 30, I don't know many guys on a defensive line who can play their best football age 30, 31, and into 32.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here on the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. When we return, we'll recap Alumni Weekend.
A big congratulations to our Hall of Fame honorees, man, that got recognized tonight. It's an honor to perform for those guys and put together a winning performance. We got so much respect for the standards that have been set here by those that have come before us. We don't run away from it. We run to it. We embrace it, and it was great to have a really competitive team victory with those men in attendance.
Welcome back to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. Are you 84 Lumber material? Visit 84lumber.com/careers to learn more.
My wife and I actually sat down, Theodora, and I get a little emotional because what I realize is I was nervous about my speech, but when I shared it with her, she says, "You were gonna write that?" And I was like, that's why I was so nervous. So, but I also realized when we worked on it together is that it was a beautiful indication of my career, because I've had such great feedback, as you say, about the speech, but I could never claim it as my own because my wife and I did it together. And what I realized is that I can only get so far, but it's what my wife and I together that brings everything to fruition. So I can never claim something as that as my own because my wife was such a big part of this speech, and I definitely appreciate the great feedback of that. But again, it's because my wife.
So good to see Troy Polamalu back in Pittsburgh. You know, he said it feels like home, and you could really see it for how emotional he was the entire weekend.
He was. Credited his wife Theodora, his kids were here. It's a big family affair. And when you look at all the Hall of Famers this organization has produced, there were a lot of gold jackets in the stands on Sunday, and it was a great sight to see.
And just to see them getting their rings, you know, obviously in Canton you unveil the bust, you give the speech, but that was something special too. David Baker, the president of the Hall of Fame, was on hand. Art Rooney II got to give it to them. 5 people. I mean, as he said, that is historic. That doesn't happen everywhere.
It doesn't happen. It probably won't happen again for quite some time. But that's a great thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know it's a big night when David Baker's in town. I actually ran into him outside of Heinz Field the other day before he was doing this, and I said, "Oh, you know it's a big day. Hello, Mr. Baker," and he was happy to be back in Pittsburgh.
All right, well, it was a huge weekend, and Alumni Weekend started with Saturday night. Here's a look back.
Thank you for being here to help us kick off a very special football weekend in Pittsburgh.
Whatever Donnie did, he just gave that extra energy, that extra effort. He really got to be a big part of our team.
I think that game was really significant for us because we ended up beating Baltimore 3 times in the same year. That game was one of the most physical games in modern era. But in particular, when I did cross the end zone, the only thing that did cross my mind, and I pointed up, was the first time that my wife and my son actually came to the game. I celebrated with my entire family. The Steeler Nation and my wife and children were there too, so very blessed.
My D-line coach told me, he said, "You want to impress me? Beat Alan Faneca." And I tried for 4 years. Well, it never really came.
You and I both played for Chuck for 5 years. Bill Cowher comes in our first meeting. He said, "I'm going to take care of you guys all week. Then you take care of me on Sunday." And he took care of us all week. And that's why I always say I love playing. I will play for Bill Cowher.
You know, Bill Nunn really took the Steeler organization into the historical black colleges. He found guys like Donnie Shell. What this guy did, not only for the Steelers, but what he did for guys like us is something that I would always cherish.
Here we go, Steelers!
As we celebrate Alumni Weekend, please welcome back Pittsburgh Steelers legends.
You are here for history tonight. In the 102-year history of the National Football League, there's never been more than 2 members of any team enshrined in the same year. Tonight, you have 5 Pittsburgh Steelers that are being enshrined.
It's such a blessing to be back here in Pittsburgh.
You know, coming back here for a night game, it's always kind of a special atmosphere.
All right, Bob, we have another big event coming up. This one benefits the Pittsburgh community. It's a favorite of yours, I know. You're always a snazzy dresser, but rock Steelers style coming up November 5th, 8 p.m.
We did it last year in a virtual event, and this time it'll be a combination virtual and some live presence there, but it's going to be a big runway. So you and I like to do that. We got Bill Crawford from WDVE doing it as well. He really gets hammy on those runways. So, and you got Greta Rooney does a great job, Mike Tomlin does a great job, and more than anything, it benefits so many great charities in this area.
I think it's also great you see a different side of the players. Some of them have swag, maybe some of them don't, but you see more of their personalities in it as well.
The swag award is always given out every year, so you never know who's going to win it. Do you have a favorite this year in terms of the swag award? Because I do.
All right, I'll go first. I feel like a Joe Hayden. You know, he's always dressed to impress. Never really misses, even just what he wears to practice on Fridays is very tailored, and you know, he has like a kind of a swagger going on about him.
He does, but I'm going to go with Alex Highsmith. I see some of the things, I've seen him out, what he wears. I have a feeling he's going to kick it up big time, and there's a lot of pride in winning that award. So
on the field and off the field for 56. Right. I like it. We're going to take another quick break here on the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. When we return, we'll talk about how the Steelers got to 3-3 and also look at the road ahead.
I think part of good coaching, man, is eliminating known issues, and so I'm challenging the staff to make our known problems disappear and lead the charge in that regard. That's just the nature of this thing. We got to continually be a group on the rise. And when you don't have a combatant waiting on you at the end of the week, it's easier to get singularly focused on yourselves and your warts.
Welcome back to the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show.
All right, Bob, the Steelers started out 1-3. Things weren't looking so great, but able to stack some wins and maybe turn some pages in terms of gelling more as units on all sides of the ball.
You know, after they lost back-to-back home games, I mean, you never want to see that. If you're any team in the NFL, especially the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they normally do very well here at home, they had to figure out what to do. They got to 1-3, but then it became, I thought in the Denver game, a tremendous maybe precursor of what we're going to see down the road. That is run the ball, more than you pass the ball. And I think when you have a guy like Najee Harris, you want to take advantage of his skills. The offensive line seemed to really benefit by that surge. 35 rushes in that game, 25 passes. I wouldn't expect that balance or 70% run the rest of the way, Missy, but I do think that's a good indication of maybe making a defense be aware that we can do it both ways if we have to moving forward.
And I think getting him over 100 yards, he first had a 100-yard receiving game, then to get the 100-yard rushing game, something the Steelers have not had since October of 2020 with James Conner. And I also think, Ben warned everybody prior to the start of the regular season there would be growing pains. And I think maybe some people didn't temper their expectations, and I think they have really stayed consistent. They have worked at it and have really tried to take a step forward each and every game.
Well, I think whenever you bring in 5 new starters essentially on the offensive line, I think those are important words from Ben Roethlisberger. He knows better than anyone the importance of a line, what it means, and how it takes time to gel. Now they're doing it, many of them as first-year players or second-year players. That's hard to do, but I think you should be encouraged by seeing some of the things that has transpired here in the last couple of games. So that will bode well for them moving forward, knowing that they can rely on a run game as the weather gets a little bit worse.
In terms of the Steelers defense, keeping a lid on it was maybe what they needed to work on earlier. I think going back to the last game, just the tackling in the second half, some of those missed things, I think that's something they definitely need to work on as well.
No question. Specifically, Devin Bush and Minkah Fitzpatrick, they missed. Terrell Edmonds missed some. Those are things that an elite defense cannot allow. And I think they have the makings of an elite defense. Certainly when you got guys like TJ Watt and Cam anchoring this thing, Highsmith emerging. Inside linebacker play's got to be good, and it's got to be consistent moving forward, especially in the pass game, covering and then making tackles if it gets to that level.
All right, well, speaking of the Steelers defense in this week's Playbook, Merril Hoge breaks down TJ Watt's big overtime in the Steelers win over the Seahawks.
We're going to take a look at TJ Watt's 2 big-time plays in overtime, his 2 sacks. We're going to focus on the first one first, and we're going to look at how there's a lot of team concept that goes along with great individual plays. So let's take a look at the first sack, and I'm going to show you the team concept that existed with this particular sack. Is it a great effort by TJ Watt? Absolutely, but a one-on-one matchup was created. This is how it's created. Spillane comes walking up here. Wormley's going to be right here. Well, when that happens, whether they blitz or not, this center, this guard has to respect that. That means this tackle right here, well, he is one-on-one with Watt. Now, I can tell you this, by the body language, this back doesn't know what he's doing. I could tell just by before the snap, he doesn't know what he's doing. This guy's on an island. The matchup is created right here by Spillane and Wormley. Great job of occupying the center and guard so they can't get out. You see that right there? Here comes Spillane. He's not rushing. However, these 2 guys have to respect this. Wormley does a really good job of really occupying both guys. That allows Watt around the edge. These matchups that were created, the press on the outside, all of that plays into this big-time play. Now let's go to the one that really matters, that ends the game. On TV, you don't get to see this. That's why I say TV lies and highlights really lie. You're going to see Watt get the sack fumble, but look at what happens before that happens. 2 best wide receivers. That is all they're going to send out. You got Metcalf. They're only going to send 2 guys out. But here's what the Steelers do. Sutton, underneath coverage. Fitzpatrick's going to come over the top. You got Hayden here and Edmonds here. They are not going to allow these 2 guys, Lockett and DK Metcalf, to beat them. Watch this. Joe, he gets to the top of his drop. Look at this. Underneath coverage, over the top. There is nowhere for him to throw the football. If he had time, the way they designed this play, well, he's got all the time in the world. The coverage on the back end was perfect. So now he can't throw the football. Now he is forced to run. And yes, you're going to see TJ Watt pop it out and end the game. It is a big-time play, but that coverage on the back end was critical.
All right, Bob, looking ahead, a Halloween matchup with the Cleveland Browns, and knowing that you already dropped an AFC North game to the Cincinnati Bengals, super important for the Steelers to get this one.
And the thing is, both teams have injuries to deal with. This is the way it is in the NFL, Missy. You got to overcome them, and Cleveland's in that situation now. And this is a game that's very winnable if the Steelers just do what they're supposed to do and not turn the ball over, because I think they're good enough to go up there and win that game. They have some issues in Cleveland with regard to, wide receivers. They've had a lot of drops. They have some injury in the running back department, and Baker Mayfield was banged up earlier in the season. So you never know how this is going to work out, but it's a huge game, especially since clearly whoever wins this division is going to have to take care of business internally. And after a loss to Cincinnati, the Steelers got to kind of run the table almost to get what they want.
And I think for the Steelers only having 3 wins, you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they seem to be getting hot at this point as well. So, you kind of start to look how far back are you?
When you look after the Cleveland game, just as important, they look like winnable games. You have Chicago at home, you have Detroit at home. After losing at home early, you can't afford any of these losses. And, Detroit's been one of those teams, even though they're not very good, they've come close to beating. They should have beaten
the Ravens.
Absolutely, if it wasn't for Justin Tucker in that 66-yard field goal. But the bottom line is they got to win those games you expect them to win, and then, go and obviously that schedule, when you look down the road, that's not an easy schedule. But I will say this, Missy, everybody in the AFC North has a really demanding schedule. Look at the Ravens, look at the Bengals, look at the Browns, like the Steelers. You can see teams losing more than you would think to win this division as it is right now.
And as you said, Coach Tomlin always preaches win your home games, fight for those division games, because you never know what's going to happen towards the end of the season, and especially not playing the Ravens until December. That just seems crazy, but hey, the schedule is the schedule.
But it's nice to have a guy like Chris Boswell on your team. They have Tucker over there in Baltimore, but man, Boswell has been Mr. Reliable. One of the most accurate kickers in the history of the game, even with that one season where nobody could figure out what was going on. That's a weapon down there. And I also thought, Presley Harvin is a young kicker. He made that big kick that set up the T.J. Watt strip sack in the game at Heinz Field. If not for that punt, they wouldn't have been pinned deep. So he's going to be a big part of this with those hidden yards.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin Show. For Bob Pompeani, I am Missi Matthews. Coach Tomlin will be back with us next week. We'll see you next Saturday night.